Talk more about the Africa Cup of Nations with Kenyan renowned sports broadcaster Bernard Otieno, who has previously led the commentary at the AFCON tournaments and is no stranger to the program. Bernard, welcome to Sports Scene. Let's talk about the program, the ongoing tournament. How prudent was it to move the Africa Cup of Nations to winter, seeing how weather has played a major role in this tournament in the past?
Yeah, well, the weather in itself has not impacted the tournament, but it has a potential impact on the players themselves. Now, you know, Morocco has the 4 seasons of spring, summer, autumn, and winter. And as we have seen, evidently, even from pictures that are coming from there, is that it's raining. So it's a rainy winter. And obviously, it's a cold winter as well. Now, that usually affects the players, especially the muscles, because it means they can't warm up faster. They are prone to having cramps more easily. We saw the goalkeeper of Botswana actually, you know, getting what looked like an hamstring or a muscle strain on the thigh out of nothing. He had just made a brilliant save, not enough to stretch himself that much, but that's because the muscles themselves don't stretch that much when it is cold. So there are ways of mitigating that. You probably warm better, dress up warmer and all that, but you know it makes you heavier as well. And we have this observation in football that when it is raining, the ball moves faster at a slightest touch, but the players move slower. So again, they're prone to injury, and that is what you must fear in weather like that. The decision to have it in winter, well, they tried to push it to that period just so that it doesn't interrupt the World Club Soccer Tournament, you know, that happened that time. So it shifted the, you know, Africa Nations Cup right up to the end from the traditional June, July kind of traditional, you know, time, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the video assistant referee, Bernard. There have been a number of key moments in these first 2 rounds that have maybe called into question the efficacy of this technology in Morocco, in probably like, for example, the Egypt-South Africa game. What do you have to say about this?
You know, I don't know whether to blame the technology or blame the technology managers, because there is somebody there who is calling for those moments and reviewing with the referee and deciding that this is what is going to happen. I think one of the most controversial was Egypt versus South Africa, where Mo Salah got a penalty for a touch on his face. But you can argue that that movement of that defender, the South African defender, the hand was not in a natural position, all right? There are literally 4 things that you would look at, I would look at if we were to award a penalty. Whether the player was in possession of the ball, whether he's facing the goal, and whether he has an obvious goal-scoring opportunity, which is called the dog so low, denying an obvious goal-scoring opportunity. But yes, any tackle in the penalty box is usually a penalty. And because the hand is not in a natural position when he's running, it's deemed to be deliberate. Now look at it on the other side. Now South Africa get a penalty which is denied. What is the explanation to that? That the hand is in a natural position when the player is falling down. So I won't blame the technology. The technology shows exactly what happened, but the technology managers are the ones who have to decide then what is going on. There was an issue with the Morocco versus Mali where 2 penalties were awarded. Benin versus Congo, where a potential penalty was denied by Benin to Benin due to a VAR system malfunction. That is where now the technology becomes a problem. And then there was also Comoros versus Zambia. A goal was ruled out for Comoros after a VAR review for a foul. So it's not so much the technology, and I've seen it happening even in other sports where the technology fails, where it is technology reliant, but it's also the technology managers themselves and what decisions are they making regarding those situations.
That's right. Yes. We've seen like sports like basketball, tennis,
absolutely.
cricket.
Even the martial arts, taekwondo and all that, sometimes the technology doesn't pick up the points. You didn't hit hard enough, or you hit hard enough, but the technology did not pick it up and all that. It's different from the goal line technology, where now if the ball crosses the line, that's obviously going to be given as a goal or not.
Yeah. Yes. Bernard, let's talk about the first round of action. 29 goals scored, 6 clean sheets recorded, and routine performance from the heavyweight contenders in that first round. The second round also began with a number of surprises. What are you maybe looking forward to in the tournament as the second round continues on?
Actually, I'm looking for nice action in the second round more than in the first round, because the first round didn't have anything that I would call spectacular. I mean, the big boys obviously came out to register, you know, just a 1-0, 2-0 win and all that, just to, you know, just to make their presence felt. And it's usually the day 2 or match day 2 matches that now determine who's moving in. So Egypt already moving into the next round with 6 points is now where you have to focus. Now we are seeing other teams coming up and causing a little bit of upsets now. Senegal not winning their second match is a little bit of a problem when it comes to now the third round matches. Because at this point, you know who's leaving the tournament. If you don't have a point in second round matches, then you're most likely going to be tossed out. But if you have 1 point and another team has 3 points, then you're most likely to go even further, because if you win one game, then you're going to have 3 points. And I think that is where now the upsets are going to come in. Mali's draw against Morocco, that was a little bit of a surprise to me as well, because this also ended Morocco's world historical winning streak.
The winning run. Yeah.
19 matches, which was the biggest after Spain's 15-match winning streak. This was brought to a halt. Now that should be a sign to the Moroccans that, it's not all glittering as they think they should. They're very well favored. They're playing at home as well. They're the best placed African nation in the FIFA rankings. They've had a good run in the World Cup and all that. They had a good run in the CHAN. But you see, things are changing. Nobody is a small team anymore when you get to this round. Zambia's draw against Comoros, that was another unexpected one. And then Zimbabwe's lead against Egypt before Egypt came in. And won the match 2-1.
If anything, you could argue that the third round might get more exciting. But Bernard, I'll come to you in just a second. Before we go any further, there has been a lone voice at the Africa Cup of Nations speaking out against the recently announced new 4-year cycle for the tournament. That's Mali head coach Tom Saintfiet, who has launched a stinging attack on the decision to stage the Africa Cup of Nations every 4 years instead of the traditional 2-year cycle, insisting the move was forced upon the continent by FIFA and European clubs motivated by money. Let's take a listen.
We fight so long to get respected in Africa, African people to get respected, Africans with their own identity, and then to listen to Europe, to change your history, because this is a history from 67, 68 years, to change that only for a financial request from the pressure of clubs, who give as excuse the load for players, but to create a World Cup for club football teams with 40 teams, who create a Champions League with no champions. If you don't relegate in England, you play already Europa Cup football.
So interesting statement there from Tom Saintfiet. Bernard, very interesting statement from the Mali coach there. Does he have a point here, or is this sour grapes?
I'm actually surprised that he's the one who's seeing it instead of the African eyes seeing it exactly, because we have to ask ourselves an important question at this point. To whose benefit is it going to be? And yes, the explanation could be that they want to align the African showpiece with the European and world showpieces, including the European leagues as well, which will be of benefit, of course, to the European leagues. But let's look at it this way. 4 years means less frequent competition for Africans and African players. Now, that means less player development as well, less player recognition. That means reduced revenue as well. Although they're saying there's going to be more prize money, but if you give me one loaf in 4 years, instead of giving me half in every 2 years, I have to think about whether it's worth it or not. Plus, I don't think the scheduling conflicts are going to go away with this new format, because it means at one time or the other, there's going to be a World Cup, there's going to be a World Club Championship, and there's going to be an African nation still in 1 year. And that is the danger of it all. So I don't know why the African, maybe it's just the first to be able to look at it, but I don't know if it's going to be a good idea at all. Because what about loss of revenue even for the hosting nations and all that? What about what about competitions for the African nations? They're saying there's going to be an African league, divided into 4 zones. How does that benefit? If Kenya plays Uganda and all, how does that benefit the area? And we already have regional tournaments, including Sekafa, including COSAFA and all that. So how is that going to play out? Now, I'm looking at the signs, and I think the last Cup of Nations that we know the hosts of is going to be Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. But we don't know the next one after that.
As of now, that's how it stands.
Now that worries me, because it means that it could be phased out after that. And you don't know if it's going to be held in 2028 again. It might just be pushed a little to 2029, and then ultimately it's phased out now to align with what we call the global calendar. So it's a little bit of a worry there.
Indeed. That will be the question on all football fans' lips. Bernard, thank you as always for joining us on the program. Bernard Otieno, veteran sports broadcaster and friend of the program. Thank you for speaking to us on the program.